Hi, everyone. I really like to start every conversation we have for our webinars and around sustainability with the actual definition of sustainability. It's a word we all hear all the time, but we rarely take the time to step back and look at what it actually means. So on your screen, you'll see the United Nations definition of sustainability, which is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I personally love this definition for many different reasons. I think it is a very simple, understandable way to talk about sustainability, but it also doesn't talk specifically about resource use or electricity or environment or social impact or your business impact or whatever it might be, because all of those things really come together in terms of making sure that we can continue operating as businesses without compromising kind of our futures as organizations and future generations' futures and whatever they want to be doing. And so I think it's a really great step back, broad understanding of the fact that sustainability means so much more than each individual part that we take action on. That being said, those individual parts are really important as well. And those are the things that we're going to be helping you to take action on to build towards the most holistic sustainability plan that you can have as an organization. So today we really want to focus in on supply chain sustainability. As organizations, we all are likely part of someone's supply chain somewhere. We have our own suppliers. So it's really, really important to understand supply chain sustainability as a concept and kind of as a practical measure as well. So starting off with kind of the idea of a supply chain versus a value chain. I don't know about any of you, but I often hear these used interchangeably. So I think it's important to define exactly what we mean, because we are going to be zooming in on the supply chain side. So a supply chain refers to any raw materials and that you need, companies you work with, components that you're purchasing, goods, services, anything like that, and then the journey that they take to get to your business before you assemble them or before you utilize the services to then provide a final product or final service to your customers. Essentially, your supply chain is all the businesses, individuals, partners, materials, whatever it may be, that you need in order to make your business work and to provide the best services and products to your customers. A value chain is broader. So the supply chain is part of your value chain. Your value chain encompasses the whole life cycle of your product, including your supply chain and sourcing, the production, the consumption, and then the disposal or reuse if you have a physical product. So value chain is before it gets to you, and then what happens with your product or service after it's heading to your customer. Really important to note the entirety of your value chain, but for today, we're going to drill into the supply chain and being a really ideal supplier for your customers when it comes to sustainability. So why does this matter? Why is it so important to be taking a look at your supply chain and to be a positive actor in your customers' supply chains? Supply chains are absolutely critical to what we do as businesses. And by acting now, you're able to identify and mitigate risks, including environmental harm and potential human rights violations. You're also looking at ensuring that every step on your supply chain, particularly in terms of your bigger suppliers, or if you're a big supplier for one of your customers, we want to make sure that you're promoting positive environmental impact, social welfare, and economic stability at every single point. And then to achieve this, you're looking at setting targets and monitoring progress, which is exactly what we're going to take a look at in terms of the ENSO platform and how we can help you really use your sustainability as a competitive advantage within your customer supply chains and getting into maybe new supply chains and renewing contracts moving forward. So, how often are we really talking about sustainability and procurement? It's becoming much, much more important, and we're going to talk a little bit about why. So First, a lot of the changes that we're seeing in procurement and the rise of environmental criteria in particular in procurement is because of green public procurement policies. So green public procurement or green procurement means choosing goods, services, and works that have reduced environmental impact throughout their life cycles when compared with a similar product or service that serves the same purpose. So it means committing to embedding environmental responsibility into your procurement process, a strategic approach to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, promote resource efficiency, support circular economy principles, reduce waste, and to influence overall markets towards more sustainable practices. Because if you're putting your money into more sustainable um, items and services, that's going to push people to become more sustainable, to be more competitive. Then we're looking at supporting innovation. What's really exciting about sustainability is there's so much room to innovate and be creative and to come up with new solutions. So with higher industry standards around sustainability, we're looking to improve our performance and be really innovative there as well. So one example of a key piece of green public procurement legislation that is driving a shift towards sustainability in procurement is the Green Public Procurement Strategy and Action Plan for 2027 to or 2024 to 2027 in Ireland. A little bit of a mouthful, so I'm just going to call it their Green Public Procurement Plan. Moving forward, this is a significant movement towards considering green criteria in public procurement in Ireland. So public bodies that spend over 200 million euro have to have implemented GPP by the end of last year. And that means that at least 5 to 10% of scoring on public tenders will include environmental criteria that is consistent with national guidance and criteria. Looking at supporting implementation as well through broader training, knowledge sharing, monitoring, and reporting. And all of this is going to be aligned with procurement practices within ISO 20400. And this is one of the leading international standards on how to implement public or green principles into your public procurement practices. And then you're looking at expanding the use of these practices across key sectors like energy, construction, food, transport, and textiles. If you're joining us from outside of the Republic of Ireland, there are similar pieces of legislation across Northern Ireland and the UK. So for example, in Northern Ireland, there's a socially responsible public procurement piece that many public bodies are looking at. So when we're looking at socially responsible public procurement, you're basically combining green public procurement with considerations for community impacts and how your business practices impact, the people that you work with, the places you work in, and kind of beyond that as well in terms of community. The good news about that is that our platform will cover environmental and social and kind of everything in between, which will make it really easy for you, those of you in Northern Ireland, and then the UK as well has similar green and social public procurement considerations. So it'll make it easy for you to comply with those as well and use it as a competitive advantage to get all of those sustainability points. So that's talking about public procurement, but not all of us are going to be looking at public contracts. So we want to take a second to take a quick look at how public procurement and green practices there are influencing private procurement practices as well. Many larger businesses might be going for some of those public procurement opportunities. So they need information about their supply chains that you are a part of to comply with those green public procurement requirements. So they're going to be kind of having a little bit of a trickle-down effect, right? If they're applying to a public tender that needs the sustainability information, their private tenders are going to start having that information as well. So they can use it to win those bigger tenders. Beyond that, we're really seeing a shift in stakeholder and investor sustainability expectations, both because of downward pressure from government policies and from a risk point of view. So stakeholders and investors want to know what you're doing to mitigate risks around sustainability to make sure that their investments are good and that they're going to be able to continue to work with you. And then kind of a last connection to sustainability that green public procurement is really pushing in the private sector is the fact that you're going to be needing to provide specific evidence of sustainability performance in these tenders. You are part of the supply chain of these bigger companies. As I've said many a time now, they need to prove their performance, which means you need to prove your performance. But how do we do that? What are these key considerations? What are these things that people are looking at? What are you going to be asked about? So a lot of the key drivers for sustainability in supply chains come from the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive in the EU and other regulations like these green public procurement regulations, like the upcoming sustainability reporting standards in the EU, and some of the other disclosure requirements that are already in place, particularly around energy use in the UK. So we are seeing a regulatory push for asking for this information. We're seeing a push from external certifications that larger businesses or maybe yourselves are looking to achieve. And we'll talk through a couple of specific ones a bit later in the presentation that you might be looking at as an organization or kind of your customers might be looking at. And then kind of the final key driver here is green finance and investor reporting. So if you have investors that are asking you yearly for an update, you're likely going to start seeing sustainability information in those pieces of, in those surveys that you need to fill out. So they might be asking about your emissions or about actions that you're taking to mitigate risks around sustainability. But then also on top of that, if you're looking for financing, maybe loan financing from a bank or from another financial institution, there are opportunities to get better interest rates and better financing because you are taking sustainability actions. Some banks like AIB and the Bank of Ireland have specific green loans that have sustainability criteria, but most banks, both in Ireland and the UK, will take a look at kind of your overall risk as someone they're lending to. And if you're taking action on sustainability, that is lower risk. So hopefully you could get some better loan conditions there as well. So with these key drivers in mind, we now want to take a look at kind of the practical. What data do you actually need to have in place for your customers? So we've talked about what is sustainability, where a lot of the procurement pressure is coming from, and now let's get into what you actually can do, what you actually need to be taking a look at. So before I quickly jump into the ENSO platform to show you how this all works, I just want to give you an example of some of the data inputs that we will be looking at as organizations, and we will be needing to answer these information requests. So at ENSO, we break this up into 4 separate categories. We have business impact, environmental impact, trading impact, and social impact, which I'll explain in a little more detail in one moment when I jump into the platform. But basically what you're seeing here is an example of what you're going to be putting into the platform. So you have all of your data there ready to answer some of these questions that you may be getting from your customers. So let's take a look at how that works. So what you're seeing now is the ENSO sustainability platform. So this is what you will be able to get access to with the email after the webinar here. So we have our 4 categories, and we have our business impact, which is any policies or practices that you have in place that can impact your stakeholders, like your team members and your customers. Then we have trading impact, which is the broadest of our 4 categories, which includes your entire value chain, which, as you remember from the beginning, your supply chain is part of that value chain. And so you're going to be looking at your own procurement practices, anything that you need to be taking note of to answer questions in procurement surveys from your customers. So it's kind of going both ways, which is very, very interesting in terms of sustainability information. Within trading impact, you also might be looking at your customer service policy, your logistics, and anything like that. Then, of course, we have environmental impact, which is the first thing a lot of us think of when we hear sustainability. This is taking a look at kind of your energy use, your emissions, your waste. And when I take you through this, you'll see we've given you a couple of extra environmental initiatives in kind of our starter plan that we have with Techies Go Green, just to make sure that we're aligning with the Techies mission of really pushing the needle on environmental impact in this tech industry. So we will jump into that in one moment. And then last but not least, we have social impact, which is any way in which you engage with the communities in which you operate. So this could be volunteering, donations, knowledge sharing, mentoring, whatever it might be. It really can be unique business by business. So to give you some examples of information that businesses, your customers might be asking you about, whether it's for tenders, for their own reporting, for certifications, or whatever it might be, we're going to look at the platform here. So I'm going to pop into business impact. So we've got kind of, I'll use our employee handbook here. This is all about what information that you're giving your customers, and within our platform, the way that you can keep track of this is by clicking open here. You'll have the commitment, the additional details, to give a bit more of an in-depth look at what you're doing. And then you can upload supporting documents as well, which Donal will show you a bit more about in a moment. You may have noticed here this VSME data and information. I'll explain what the VSME is a little bit more, but very quickly, it is a framework made for SMEs to help you organize any data that you might need specifically for information requests, actually. It was aligned with Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, but it's very useful beyond that. We'll talk about that a bit more in our frameworks section in a little bit. So if we pop into trading impact here, some other examples of things people might be asking you about would be your health and safety plan. This is something you very likely have in place, but it's obviously very, very important. Looking at potentially our packaging information, if you do have a physical product, how people should be disposing of your packaging once they get it. And then here we've got our environmental impact. So we've got, as I said earlier, a couple of extra ones here. We can look at emissions, climate change, and sustainability education, which you're actually all taking part in right now, learning a little bit more about sustainability and the information that you might need. And then, of course, we've got our water use, waste, and energy use in terms of electricity and gas. And then last but not least, there is only one here, and this is actually pretty close to what you get on the full plan as well, because we like to fill this one out on a case-by-case basis, because we're all unique as businesses. We have unique expertise and unique things to bring to the table when it comes to social impact and engaging with our communities. We really like to build this one out on a case-by-case basis, so you'll be able to come in here, put in your commitment, and spend as much time as you want popping in additional detail about who you're working with, how you're doing it, and hopefully what positive impact it's having. So really what this is about is getting in what you're already doing well, taking a look at potential actions for the future and commitments for the future, and then explaining how you're doing it moving forward. So that strategy section is where you're going to be starting your journey with us at ENSO.